Hi, my name's Jonathan. I've been making some window grills out of this sort of mesh, which is 2" by 2". It is a gauge, I'll put it up later on, but it's about 50mm by 50mm by 6mm diameter. So I've been using this mesh, which I've been buying in 8x4, 8 foot by 4 foot sheets, and making frames out of this sort of material, which is 16mm by 3mm steel bar. Again, I'll put the spec for that up later on. I've had windows in, been around a workshop, so there's been various things to avoid and some alterations to a basic square grill. Some have had to avoid conduit, some have had to avoid existing window bars, some there's been a bench there and part of the grill has to go above it and a part below it. Others it's just been too heavy to lift into place, so I've had to split it into two and plan for that from the beginning. Designed to install, I suppose. It took me a while to get the best method of doing it sorted out, so I hope that this may be of help if you're doing a similar thing. I ordered in some of this, I think it's 15mm by 3mm by about 12 foot long steel bar just to make frames to go around the outside, and the grill mesh, I think that's 2" by 2" to make the actual grills out of, to weld onto them. I'm drilling holes in them while it's easy to get them to the drill. Such as in this one. Much easier to drill it now than when they're finished. These are for a frame to make another grill like this one. One more corner to tack. The frame just made, like the one on the bench, will need two strips down the middle of it so that it can be separated into two halves to make fitting easier, as you can see here. I found the best thing to do was to have a gap between the two strips which match the width of the wire of which the mesh is made up. Then it would sit in place easily to put together. This window needed the corner chopping off to accommodate a saddle conduit, and as the conduit ran along the top of the window, not leaving much room, the grill mesh had to be sunk into the frame rather than just put on top of the frame. So the wire of the mesh butts up against the frame in one direction, whilst in the other direction it sits on top of the frame. If I hadn't done this, the frame would have sat up the width of the wire higher on the frame, which is about 5mm in this case, and wouldn't have quite fitted underneath the conduit. Having put together the frame that will hold the grill on the window, I just want to put it in place to check that it fits and to drill a few of the fixing holes so that when it comes to assembling the completed item, there'll be holes already drilled in the window frame to take it. I've put a couple of screws in the bottom of the window. I guess this slot is something to do with windowsills, but it gives me a height and it's just right to rest the window frame on when trying it in position for size and so on, and I can take them out afterwards. Saves trying to hold the thing up and screw it in and everything all at once. It just sits on there with something leaning against it to hold it in place. Oh no, too hot. Looks better. I plan to put it this way because my tacks are on the outside, so it'll sit flatter, whether I grind them down or not. So I'll mark a few holes and put some screws in, so the next time I bring it, it'll go back in the same position. So anyway, the frame now in place. I can drill a few more holes so that, and then take it down and add the grill. I'm aiming for this rib to go down the centre between these two bars so that I can cut it out and leave the two halves. Having got the frame and the mesh lined up so they'll weld nicely, it's just a matter of whether to clamp them or spot weld them or a combination, and then cut them to size, cut the mesh to size. At times, especially when the mesh was a large piece like this, I found it easier to do it when the mesh was vertical, and at other times I found it easier to do on the bench, although there's pros and cons to both. I think doing it vertically, the mesh can fall on you if you're not careful, and it's best not to leave the last cut to be the one at the bottom. And doing it on the bench, well, cutting through, you've only got a few millimeters to stop you putting a cut in the bench. So it's just picking the right method, really. Right, a part removed. Looks like I've missed one at the other end. Oh, there. turn this over. This is the way it's got to go up against the wall space. Up against the window rather. I think you can see now these are sitting on the frame and these are butting up to the frame. There is the width of a cutting disc between them. The welder will fill that up. I did have to call a halt to work for a while, as in the middle of having some block work done I noticed there was a robin nesting in what were old arc welding rod holders in the wall. So I thought I'd better let them get on with it for a while. I did come back after a few days, well 13 days, and they'd all gone. That's better. Just as I started welding, I had recording problems with the camera. So what you get to see now are the two halves of that original grill after I've tacked the grill onto the frame and then cut it down the middle to separate it into two halves. As I've got two windows the same size and each one is cut into two pieces, I've got to mark them top, bottom, left and right and so on, so I know which is which. So that one's screwed in and the welding finished. Could do with painting or galvanising, one or the other. This window needed a small square cutting out, so it would give access to the window handle, and it was actually this window where a top part had to be made that could be installed from above the bench, and then a smaller bottom part made that could be installed from underneath the bench. I hope it's been of interest and thank you for watching.